gets upset if she doesn't let it out. She bottles it all up. And when it does come out, somebody's going to die. So those were her literal words the week before.
Yeah.
And then she dug the grave. Oh, she dug the grave 2 days after that. And then the murder was the following Wednesday. So there was definite premeditation.
Yes.
She was kind of just lying in wait, you know. So they find the journal, the volunteers find the hole, and while the local sheriff's deputy's looking at the hole, he sees FBI agents bring Alyssa Bustamante out to the woods, and he overhears her saying that she actually dug 2 holes. So they bring her over to the empty hole, and they're like, why did you dig this hole? And she said that sometimes she finds dead animals, and she likes to dig holes and bury them. So at this point, they end up taking her down to, I'm pretty sure they go down to FBI headquarters at this point. And they confront her with the journal. So once they confront her with the journal, she starts to tell them what happened. And she says that her sister had gone next door and gotten her. When they got back over to the front of their house, she said her sister fell in like a prickly bush and ended up going inside. So at this time, she took Elizabeth by the hand and walked her into the woods toward the holes. But then she says that she slipped and hit her head on a rock and died on her own, so she just put her in the hole. And they don't believe her, and they say the autopsy will tell us exactly what happened to this child. So that's when she doesn't necessarily fess up, I would say, but they tell her that they can see, you know, her journal says slit and throat, and they ask her, is her throat, when we find her, will her throat be slit? And Alyssa answers yes. So this confession is actually going to end up getting suppressed when she goes to trial, because and I don't hear, and I never have heard any mention of them reading her rights or asking if she wanted a lawyer. Her mom was there though, but they do end up suppressing this testimony. But luckily they have enough other evidence that once they suppress this confession, then they can still use their backup evidence. But they immediately arrest her, and they end up finding Elizabeth's body. She takes them back to the woods and shows them the second hole where she had placed Elizabeth's body.
So about that hole, I have a question. It was under my impression, and I guess I never second guessed it. I assumed that the holes were close together. Were they
next to each
were
other?
they not?
They never really said that they were or
Okay.
weren't. And the pictures that I saw of the holes, they looked very similar to each other, like they were very square. But you didn't actually see them next to each other, as far as I could tell. So
That's interesting.
They were like just a little bit off from each other in a wooded area. And investigators, I don't have any evidence that she said this, but investigators were under the impression she was going to kill her younger brothers and put them in those 2 holes. And that's why there was 2 holes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She had a YouTube channel. She had a pretty heavy social media influence, as, most teenagers do. And she had a YouTube channel, the one that you mentioned, Christy, with the cutting and killing as her hobbies. She had posted a video there where she makes her brothers touch an electrified horse fence. Have you seen that video?
Yes, I did. Very creepy.
So
Yeah.
the channel's still up and everything?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I mean, in the video, she doesn't force them. It's more like they're all goofing around together, but she doesn't show any concern for the fact that her younger brothers might get injured or die.
Right.
That's for sure. So she definitely had, and I'm not sure if it's that video that made the police think that those holes were for her brothers, but that's what they thought. That's what they had ended up thinking. And they felt as though Elizabeth had kind of wandered into her path, and all of a sudden she found herself alone with her. And so it was kind of a crime of opportunity.
Yes, I do think that makes sense. But I also think that the fact that that information on her wall, it mentions her sister, and this happens to be a friend of her sister that she used one of the graves for. I wonder if she really had a different plan all along. I don't know. I'm not sure about the brothers.
We will never know. Yeah. Yeah. I was always thinking they must have heard or known something that they didn't release.
Yeah.
In regards to the brothers, for them to think something that drastic. What a terrible thought for all of her younger siblings, you know, to think that she would have ever even thought to do something like that.
And I think it definitely goes to premeditation, but also the fact that she was considering murdering another person. That was her plan.
It goes toward, you know, everyone always wants to talk about whether we should lock kids up or try to rehabilitate them. And there's always those cases of some kids that I could see the court saying this child will not be able to be rehabilitated, mostly because she seems to like being this way. She, in her mind, you know, she enjoys the darker side of things and she likes to inflict pain on people. She's not going to be rehabilitatable until she shows genuine remorse and wants to change, just like any kind of person, any kind of addict, any kind of person who wants to change any habit.
That's so true.
So there's definitely people who can't be rehabilitated regardless of what their age is, because if you're not open to it, it'll never happen. And it's very easy. I don't want to say it's very easy, but it doesn't seem to be that hard to trick psychiatrists, psychologists with and act sane or act like you're not still interested in causing harm when you are. It's not hard to do that.
Was wondering your thoughts on the fact that there were literally 3 modes of inflicting wounds on this young girl. So she slit her throat, she strangled her, and she also stabbed her, which I feel like is obviously overkill, but it's just kind of unusual obviously it's unusual for a child to murder, but it's also unusual for a child to use different types.
Well, I've noticed that when that happens, it seems like children or just people in general think it's a lot easier to kill somebody than it really is.
Oh, that makes sense.
I feel like maybe her intention was to strangle her until she realized it's going to take 5 minutes of continued compression to actually end someone's life. It's a lot harder to strangle someone than somebody thinks from watching TV. So, and I just feel like she probably had to keep moving on to something else until she ended up having to slit her throat to make sure she was dead, which the more you think about it, some of the more shocking details, because at any point during this assault that Elizabeth wasn't dead, she could have stopped and saved her life. But instead of ever wanting to do that, she kept trying to come up with more and more brutal things to do to her that would certainly end it, you know.
Which I think also kind of plays into the fact of her being a child and not well thought out.
I just keep thinking, wouldn't you get scared at some point? Like, I would just be scared to be in the woods after dark by myself.
That's what I was going to say.
That's what I was going to say. That too.
You see your dad digging a hole and you're like, Dad, let me help you. I want to help. And then he's like, okay, here you go. He gives you the shovel and you're like, oh, never mind.
You do it once, I'm done.
Murderous Minors Killer Kids is sponsored by POSHMARK. Did you know that instead of buying things new, you can shop from millions of closets across America? Well, it's easy with POSHMARK. Me personally, I have a few go-to brands that I know will always fit, like H&M, Puma, and Forever 21. Luckily, for simple gals like me, POSHMARK isn't just for Prada and Coach. The selection of items from my fantasy brands makes me want to put my fancy pants on every day. You won't believe the deals that you'll find on POSHMARK. Just today, I saw a Puma messenger bag in pink and mint green for just $10, along with a pair of rose gold Puma Fierce Core sneakers for $75, which have been sold out in my size everywhere. See something that you want? Make the seller an offer. With super fast, easy shipping for everyone, you'll quickly see that POSHMARK is the easiest way to buy and sell fashion items for women, kids, and men. Listeners of Murderous Minors Killer Kids get $5 off your first purchase. Just enter the invite code KILLERKIDS when you sign up. Download the free POSHMARK app, find me by my closet handle at warbaby, and get ready to have tons of high-quality brands to shop from. Just enter invite code KILLERKIDS when you sign up for $5 off your first purchase. That's invite code KILLERKIDS. It's like Black Friday every day on Poshmark with designer brands like Louis Vuitton, Michael Kors, and Betsy Johnson for a deal.
It reminds me of case, and it reminds me of the case about the ex-girlfriend who was a stalker. She was so dedicated and so good at the stalking. And here this girl, she's so dedicated that she will dig 2 huge holes.
Are you talking about Carrie and Liz?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Liz.
Liz, she was so,
I mean, seriously,
so dedicated.
Okay, so just the fact that she kept getting all his personal information, like his email addresses, no matter what he did, she always had it. Oh, goodness sakes.
How do you have the time? Especially when you have kids.
Right.
Hey, that's dedication.
Yes, it is.
She had to get a work from home job.
Yeah, she should have taken that energy and put it into something else. She would have been successful.
Absolutely.
Right. Imagine her apple pie if she had just put
Apple
her mind
pie,
to it.
That's great.
Anything. Just anything else.
Right.
And what I need to see a picture of this guy. Was he really worth this?
I mean, I wouldn't say he was bad looking. He was average, definitely average.
But definitely,
because if you're an avid Dateline watcher like me, most of the times when there's a love triangle, the guy is just not even worth looking at twice, much less ruining families over.
And
right.
It's funny.
Anyway, I was giving my opinion about how many different methods she used to murder this child. To me, the fact that she used so many different ways to murder this poor baby was something probably to do with the fact that, first of all, she probably wanted to try out these different methods, given the things that she'd said to her friends and written down in her own journal in the past. But when it comes down to it, it's not that easy to kill someone, and you might, as you can see, have to resort to other things if you're not strong enough to do it. It takes about 2 years and 4 months before Alyssa actually is ready to go to trial. Wow. They did a bunch of psychological evaluations and things of that nature. And then as she's right about to go to trial, that's when the defense requested that they put in the motion to suppress her confession, because they felt that the line of questioning was inappropriate for a juvenile under Missouri law. And the judge agreed, so they suppressed her confession. It wasn't allowed in court, but they still had her journal. They still had, the holes, DNA evidence, bloody clothes, murder weapon. They still had all of those things. So the fact that they suppressed her confession wasn't a huge deal, especially because it had already been all over the media for years that she had confessed. So unfortunately, anyone who knew anything about this case would have known she had confessed, regardless of whether it was admissible in court. Around the same time, so it's 2012 now. So something that I talk about on my show a lot is how in 2012, the United States Supreme Court ruled that juvenile life without parole sentences were unconstitutional. So as she's approaching going to trial, the ruling hasn't come down yet, but they know a ruling is impending, and it's making the state prosecutors, they're nervous about it. So they decide to offer a plea, which, Elizabeth's family and the community was not overly thrilled about, because pleas usually result in less prison time.
Yeah.
And they really want to lock her up without parole, It was a first-degree murder charge. I mean, if it had been admissible in Missouri, she could have gotten the death penalty in some states, So they go ahead and offer her a plea so that they don't have to go to trial. So she ends up getting sentenced to 30 years for armed criminal action, which is using the knife, and life with parole for the murder of Elizabeth. So between her 2 combined sentences, she'll have to spend 35 years and 5 months incarcerated before she's eligible to apply for parole. So she'll be about 50 years old.
Wow.
Jeez.
It's always nice to think people can get at least something out of their life.